Be honest. You've been in a room with someone and felt something was off. Not wrong in a way you could name, not wrong in a way you could explain to anyone else. Just wrong. Like something underneath the surface of every conversation, every compliment, every moment of apparent kindness was quietly pulling something from you. And you couldn't figure out what. You couldn't figure out why you left every interaction with that person feeling slightly smaller than when you arrived. That feeling wasn't paranoia. That feeling was information. And here's what nobody tells you. Narcissists don't announce themselves. They don't walk in wearing a sign. They walk in wearing your language, your values, your needs. They study what matters to you, and then they hand it back to you in a way that feels like connection, but functions like a leash. You've been around one. Maybe you're around one right now, and the reason you haven't been able to fully see it is because you've been looking for the obvious, the loud, the cruel. But cruelty at this level isn't always loud. Sometimes it's quiet. Sometimes it looks like support. Sometimes it sounds like love. So stop looking for the monster. Start looking for the patterns. Because once you see them, really see them, you cannot unsee them. And that changes everything. The first behavior is this. They make everything about them, but in a way that looks like it's about you. You come to them with something real, something that cost you something to say out loud, a struggle, a fear, a moment where you need someone to just hear you. And within 60 seconds, the conversation has shifted, subtly, carefully, almost invisibly. And suddenly, you're listening to them, their version of your problem, their harder experience, their bigger pain. You barely noticed the switch. That's the point. It's not accidental. It's not even fully conscious in some cases. But it is consistent. And consistency is what exposes it. Because anyone can have an off day. Anyone can make a conversation about themselves once. But when it happens every time, when you realize you have never once finished a full thought without it becoming a launchpad for their narrative, that's not personality. That's a pattern. And patterns don't lie. They don't respect you. They need you as an audience. There's a difference. Read that again. The second behavior cuts deeper. They react to your success differently than they react to your failure. Watch this carefully, because this is where the mask slips without them realizing it. When something goes wrong for you, when you lose, when you struggle, when you're at a low point, they're there, present, warm, almost enthusiastically supportive. And it feels real. It feels like care. But what you're actually seeing is comfort. Not comfort for you, comfort for them. Because your failure is not a threat. Your failure is a position they understand, a dynamic that works for them. Now watch what happens when something goes right. Watch their face in the first half second before they compose it. Watch the delay before the congratulation. Watch how the celebration of your win has a ceiling, and that ceiling is somewhere just below their own sense of self. They'll support you up to a point, but cross that point, outshine them, outgrow them, I'd outperform them in an area they've quietly claimed as theirs, and the warmth cools. The support becomes conditional. The compliments start arriving with edges. That's great, but good for you, although I'm happy for you. I just wonder if they don't hate you. They compete with you, quietly. And the reason it's so disorienting is that they've convinced you, and possibly themselves, that they're on your side. But you cannot be someone's biggest fan and their secret competition at the same time. Eventually, the competition wins. And when it does, you feel it. You feel it before you understand it. That slight chill. That moment where your good news lands wrong, where the room shifts. That shift is the truth. The third behavior is the one people miss the most because it hides inside what looks like personality. They rewrite history, and they do it calmly, confidently, like they were there for a version of events that you somehow missed. You remember a conversation. You remember what was said. You remember how it made you feel. And when you bring it up, not even in conflict, just in reference, they look at you like you're slightly unhinged, like you've misremembered, like the emotional damage you carry from that moment is a product of your own interpretation, not their behavior. That's not what happened. You're too sensitive. You always do this. And here's what makes it dangerous. They say it with such certainty that you start to wonder. You go back through your own memory and start questioning your own accuracy. You start wondering if maybe your perception is the problem, if maybe you are too sensitive, if maybe you really do misread things. That doubt they planted, that's the whole game. Because a person who constantly makes you question your own perception of reality is not someone who is confused. They are someone who needs your confusion in order to stay in control. Your certainty is a threat to them. Your clarity is a threat to them. So they erode it, slowly, repeatedly, casually, until you stop trusting yourself enough to challenge them. Let that sink in. The goal was never to win the argument. The goal was to make you afraid of your own mind. This is where everything changes. Because here's the part most people never understand. These behaviors only work on you as long as you need something from them. Validation, approval, their version of the story, their acknowledgement of your reality. And the moment you stop needing any of that, not as a performance, not as a defense mechanism, but genuinely stop needing it, their entire toolkit becomes useless. This isn't about confrontation. This isn't about exposing them publicly or winning some war. This is about something far more powerful and far more quiet. It's about the moment you realize that their opinion of events is just that, an opinion. One you no longer require to be corrected. One you no longer need to argue against. Because you know what happened. You were there. And your clarity doesn't need their confirmation to be real. When that lands, really lands, something in you changes. You stop reacting. You stop explaining. You stop trying to make them see what they are committed to not seeing. And suddenly the dynamic shifts entirely. Because everything they do is designed to get a reaction. The subtle jabs, the competitive undermining, the rewriting of history, all of it is a hook. And a hook only works if you bite. When you don't bite, they escalate. When you still don't bite, they get confused. And confusion in a narcissist is one of the most clarifying things you will ever witness, because it reveals how little they know how to operate when the performance stops landing. The fourth behavior is this. They test boundaries not by crossing them once, but by crossing them slowly, repeatedly, and then acting wounded when you enforce them. They don't kick the door open. They lean on it, slightly, consistently, just enough to feel normal, just enough that calling it out seems dramatic. And when you do call it out, when you finally say, clearly, that something is not acceptable, they don't receive it as information. They receive it as an attack. The boundary becomes the problem, not the behavior that required it. They go quiet, or they get loud. They flip to fragility. Suddenly, they are the injured party. Suddenly, your limit is cruelty. Your boundary is punishment. Your need for basic respect is reframed as aggression. And if you're not steady, that reframing gets in. It makes you second-guess the limit you set. It makes you soften it, walk it back, apologize for needing it. And the moment you apologize for a legitimate boundary, you've handed them the manual for how to control you. Stop apologizing for your limits. A person who cannot respect what you need without making you pay for it emotionally is telling you exactly who they are. Believe them. The fifth behavior is the one that ties all the others together. And it's the one that's hardest to talk about because it touches something most people don't want to look at directly. They chose you specifically, not randomly, not accidentally. They identified something in you, your empathy, your self-doubt, your capacity to extend the benefit of the doubt, your commitment to fairness, your need to be understood, and they positioned themselves directly against those qualities to extract maximum access. Your empathy became their excuse. Your self-doubt became their leverage. Your fairness became their loophole. This is the part that hurts. Because it means the qualities you're most proud of, your ability to see the good in people, your loyalty, your patience, were the precise qualities that were weaponized against you. But here's the mic drop. Those qualities are not the problem. The problem was never who you are. The problem was that you were surrounded by someone too small to deserve access to who you are. And once you understand that, Once that distinction actually settles in, the self-blame dissolves, not because you did everything right, but because the game was rigged from a position you didn't know existed. You weren't naive, you were trusting. And there's a version of you on the other side of this that still trusts, but selectively, calmly, without apology, without performing openness to people who've already shown you their ceiling. When you reach this level of understanding, things get quiet. Not the quiet of giving up, the quiet of clarity. You stop performing patience for people who've already used their chances. Or you stop over-explaining yourself to people who've decided their interpretation is more important than your truth. You stop requiring the relationship to make sense because you already understand it, and you start moving differently, not loudly, not dramatically, just differently. You become harder to manipulate because you no longer need their approval as a daily resource. You become harder to destabilize because you've stopped outsourcing your sense of reality to people who benefit from distorting it. You become, to the kind of people we've been talking about, almost unreadable, and that makes you, in the most practical sense, unreachable. That is the power, not revenge, not exposure, not confrontation, just the quiet, grounded daily practice of trusting yourself over the noise of someone who needed you not to. You don't need them to admit what they did. You don't need closure from someone incapable of giving it. You don't need everyone in the room to see what you see. You see it. That's enough. That has always been enough.